In the dim light of the cold cave, two souls from different worlds were locked onto each other. The woman's deep blue skin was as mysterious as the silence echoing within the cavern. Her glowing orange eyes were fixed on the weary yet unwavering gaze of the man before her. Her long, pointed ears quivered slightly, betraying the storm of emotions within her. She placed her hands on the man's strong shoulders, leaning into him as if she were a prisoner trying to break through the boundaries of her world. The man looked like a warrior worn down by countless battles. His muscular arms bore the scars of the struggles he had endured over the years. But the real battle was the one waging inside him. He wanted to touch her, to stay with her forever. Yet he knew there was no future for this love. In his world, she was a threat. In hers, he was an invader. Her voice echoed against the stone walls of the cave. "Kadaros, what could possibly separate us?" she whispered. His throat tightened. Hearing his name from her lips was like a prayer. "Planets," he answered in a heavy voice. "Our races, our laws, our beliefs." She shook her head, her slender blue fingers brushing against his chin. "These are barriers we created. Ask your heart, Kadaros, will you come with me?" He took a deep breath, his gaze lost in the brilliance of her star-like eyes. To leave with her, to abandon everything. His place among humanity, his title as a warrior, his world. But was this love worth it? She was calling him, but if he went, it could spark a war. Humanity saw her people as a threat. If he fled with her, he might ignite the flames of conflict, but if he stayed, he would never see her again, carrying this moment as an eternal wound in his soul. The woman closed her eyes and rested her forehead against his. "If you stay, I will be lost. My people will see me as a traitor, but if you go, at least we'll have a chance to live." Kadaros took a deep breath. His choice would not only decide his fate but perhaps the fate of two worlds. But which weighed more, the sky or the earth? The woman tightly shut her eyes, her heart fluttering like a trapped bird. She took one last look at Kadaros, wanting to etch his features, his scent, his touch into her memory. She couldn't leave, but if she stayed, this love would end in either death or betrayal. As the war raged within her, a shadow appeared at the entrance of the cave. A sharp hum vibrated through the stone walls. Then, a piercing scream echoed, making them both flinch. Kadaros spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for the dagger at his belt. The woman stepped back, narrowing her eyes. Emerging from the shadow was a creature clad in curved, bony armor. Its thin but deadly claws scraped against the cave walls as it moved forward. Its glowing orange eyes burned with the same intensity as the woman's. With horror, she whispered, "They found me." Kadaros' face tensed. "What is that?" She grabbed his wrist, her voice laced with pain and fear. "My people. They followed me. They won't let me escape." The creature let out a high-pitched shriek and lunged at them. Kadaros drew his sword, swiftly dodging to the side. He saw the woman leap back with equal agility. The creature's claws slammed into the stone floor, leaving deep marks. The woman steadied her breath and raised her hand. A faint blue energy radiated from her palm. As she unleashed it toward the creature, it shrieked and recoiled. But this was only one of them. More shadows loomed at the entrance. Kadaros gritted his teeth. "Looks like there's no way out." The woman lowered her head in anguish. "If I fight them, my betrayal will be certain." "Haven't you already accepted that?" Kadaros roared. "If they came to take you back, then you've already made your choice." She hesitated for only a moment. Then, when she lifted her head, the doubt in her eyes had vanished. "Then will you fight by my side, human?" Kadaros smirked, gripping his sword tighter. "The name's Kadaros." The first creature lunged again. The woman thrust her glowing hand forward, sending a wave of blue energy crashing into it. Kadaros seized the opportunity, stepping forward and driving his sword into the creature's neck in one swift motion. Dark blood splattered across the stone floor. But the others didn't wait. Two more creatures charged, one toward Kadaros, the other toward the woman. She dodged swiftly, then flung another pulse of energy at her attacker, slamming it into the cave wall. But it quickly recovered and phased. Kadaros raised his shield just in time to block the incoming claws. He swung his sword downward, stabbing into the creature's bony armor. But it wasn't as fragile as humans, the creature snarled, pushing back against him. Gritting his teeth, Kadaros put all his strength into his blade, driving it deeper. A chilling shriek filled the cave before the beast collapsed lifelessly. The woman turned to face the final creature. This one was different, larger, stronger. She took a deep breath. "Their commander." The creature spoke, its voice deep and menacing. "You abandoned us, Lyra. You betrayed your own kind." She narrowed her eyes. "My people only gave me two choices, obey or die. I created a third."
Hello, a little break to the story. Please do not forget to subscribe to my channel, like the video, and share your best part from story to the comments. Thanks. Let's return to the story again.
The creature roared and lunged at her. Lyra closed her eyes, summoning her energy, and suddenly spread her arms wide. A powerful wave of blue light illuminated the cave, sending the creature stumbling backward. Kadaros didn't waste the opening. Clutching his sword, he charged and slashed at the exposed chest of the beast. As steel tore through flesh, another agonized scream echoed through the cave. The creature fell to its knees, then collapsed, lifeless. Silence fell. Lyra and Kadaros, breathless, stared at each other. They were alive, but now, what would they do? She clenched her blood-stained hands. "My people will never forgive me now. I have nowhere to run." Kadaros sheathed his sword. Then, stepping forward, he cupped her face in his hands. "Then come with me." Lyra gazed into his eyes for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. There was no turning back now. As they emerged from the cave, the sky was a vast, endless shroud of darkness. In the distance, the two moons of Lyra's planet cast a pale glow. Kadaros held his breath, scanning the horizon. The silence was deceiving. If Lyra's people had already found her, they had likely alerted the galactic forces by now. Lyra took a deep breath, her eyes still frozen with the weight of the recent battle. "We don't have much time. If they're searching for us, more soldiers will arrive soon." Kadaros nodded. "We need a ship." Lyra narrowed her eyes. "I have one, or at least, I used to. It might still be where I hid it." "Where?" She looked into the distance, west of Kagan Tower, in the old wreckage zone. "But the problem is, what?" Kadaros asked, noticing her hesitation. Lyra swallowed lightly. "That area is where my people's fiercest warriors gather. Hiding my ship there might have been a mistake, but at the time, I had no intention of escaping. Still, if we're lucky, we can slip in unnoticed." Kadaros touched the hilt of his dagger. "And if we're noticed, we fight our way out." Lyra gave him a faint, almost amused look. "It seems that way." And so, the escape began. Blending into the shadows of the night, the two moved swiftly over the rocky terrain. Lyra's planet remained a mystery to human colonies. Its atmosphere was toxic, but the native inhabitants had adapted to it. Kadaros wore a special breathing filter to protect him from the planet's gases, but even that wouldn't keep him alive for long. They had to leave. After hours of travel, they finally reached the wreckage site. Twisted metal heaps, shattered ship hulls, rusted towers. This place was the remnant of an ancient war. Kadaros rested a hand on his sword's hilt. "We're still here," Lyra whispered. But at that moment, a bright beam of light shone down on them. "Fugitives located. Stand down immediately." Above them, a massive warship loomed. One of the flagship vessels of Lyra's people. "Damn it," Kadaros hissed. Lyra quickly crouched, her glowing eyes darting for an escape route. "My ship is behind that wreckage. If we reach it, we can launch into hyperspace." But enemy soldiers were already closing in. Armored warriors with energy weapons scoured the area. There was no time to run. Kadaros unsheathed his sword. "Then we fight our way through." Lyra's eyes hardened. She raised her hands, unleashing a pulse of blue energy. One soldier was thrown backward, but more were coming. "We just need to buy time," Lyra shouted. They sprinted through the wreckage, dodging laser fire as bolts struck the metal debris around them. Lyra's ship lay ahead, half buried in the ground. They had no idea if it was still functional. Kadaros deflected an incoming blast before sidestepping an attacking soldier and taking him down with a single strike. Lyra didn't hesitate, sending another energy wave that hurled 3 soldiers into the air. But the enemy wasn't giving up. From above, the warship fired a massive energy beam. The ground trembled, explosions rippled through the wreckage, and debris flew everywhere. Kadaros felt a searing pain on his arm as he barely dodged the blast. "Can you get the ship running?" he yelled. Lyra climbed onto the hull, slipping inside. She activated the control panel, her fingers moving swiftly across the interface. Lights flickered, engines sputtered. But much of the system was damaged. "Get inside," she shouted. Kadaros took down one last opponent before leaping into the ship. The door sealed shut just as enemy soldiers surrounded them. Lyra, breathless, powered up the engines. The ship's hull groaned. One of the engines sparked and failed, but the other roared to life. "We're taking off." The ship trembled as it lifted from the wreckage. But the warship above wasn't giving up. On their radar, 3 fighter ships locked onto their position. "They won't let us escape." Kadaros growled. Lyra gritted her teeth. "Then we'll outrun them." And so, the chase began. Lyra's ship pushed through the upper layers of the atmosphere, struggling against the pull of gravity as laser blasts from their pursuers shook the hull. Warning lights flashed. Systems were taking damage. Kadaros entered the cockpit, crossing his arms. "We're not outrunning them. Those warships are faster than you." Lyra gritted her teeth, her glowing eyes scanning the control panels. "I'm not faster, but I'm smarter." And then she saw it. In the corner of the radar screen, a chaotic energy signature appeared. Illegal signals, erratic light trails. "A pirate fleet," Kadaros frowned. "You're flying toward them." Lyra adjusted their course, speeding toward the pirate zone. "If they want to destroy us, they'll have to deal with the pirates first." The warships were still in pursuit, but Lyra's plan was working. Ahead of them, a massive pirate station came into view, a rusted, half-ruined structure of metal and debris. Smaller pirate ships patrolled the area. Their ship was detected immediately, and a transmission from the station echoed through all channels. "This is the Black Star Station. Whoever you are, power down your weapons, or your wreckage will float in space." The warships trailing them slowed down. Even Lyra's people weren't foolish enough to pick a fight with the pirates without good reason. Lyra took a deep breath and activated the comms. "Black Star Station, we request sanctuary." A brief silence followed before a sharp, mocking laugh crackled through the speakers. "Sanctuary? And on what grounds?" Suddenly, 4 massive pirate ships surrounded them. Kadaros gripped his dagger tightly. "I think they're more interested in selling us than helping us." Lyra closed her eyes briefly. "I think so too." And just like that, their ship was caught in tractor beams and forcefully pulled into the station. As the ship's doors opened, the stench of rusted metal filled the air. Dozens of armed pirates stood in formation, their weapons trained on them. The pirates were a rough-looking mix of humans and alien species, clad in mismatched armor, their scarred faces filled with suspicion and amusement. One pirate stood out from the rest. He was draped in a heavy captain's cloak, a red mechanical eye glowing in his scarred face, giving him a menacing aura. "Well, well," the captain called out. "Lyra, I know you. There's a hefty bounty on your head." Kadaros narrowed his eyes. "You planning to sell us?" The pirate captain sneered, turning toward him. "Who the hell are you, warrior?" "On my ship, I ask the questions." Lyra took a deep breath. "If you sell me, yes, you'll get a nice bounty. But if you help me, I can offer you something far greater." The pirate captain tilted his head. "And what might that be?" Lyra exchanged a glance with Kadaros before stepping forward. "You know there's a war brewing between my people and the humans. If you protect us, I can give you information that will give you the upper hand when the war comes. And more than that, our pursuers are already here. I led them straight to you." The captain's mechanical eye flickered as his grin faded. "So, you've brought a war to my station. Either you turn the fight to your advantage, or they wipe you out too." For a moment, the pirate captain was silent. Then, suddenly, he threw his head back and laughed. "You've got guts, Lyra. but let's see if you're clever enough." He raised his hand and gestured to his men. "Take their weapons. We won't kill them. Yet, first, we drink. Then we'll decide your fate." Kadaros leaned toward Lyra and whispered, "I don't like him." Lyra gave a faint smile. "Neither do I." But for now, they had no choice but to bargain with the pirates. The pirate captain flashed a wicked grin at Lyra and Kadaros before turning to his men. "Throw them in the cells." Kadaros tensed. His hand moved toward his sword, but Lyra gently touched his arm. Her eyes told him to wait. He clenched his jaw but didn't let go of his weapon. "You're planning to sell us, aren't you?" he hissed. The pirate captain chuckled, shrugging. "Just doing my job. Your little alien princess here has a hefty bounty. And you, a human soldier, right? I could get a good price selling you back to your government." "You fools," Lyra growled. "If they take me back, they'll track this station down and destroy it." "You should have considered my offer," the captain laughed. "If I sell you, I won't have to worry about that at all." Kadaros turned to Lyra, lowering his voice. "That a plan?" She narrowed her eyes, scanning their surroundings. "For now, we stay alive." Armed pirates grabbed them roughly, dragging them through the rusted, dim corridors of the station. All dripped from the ceilings, and the air reeked of metal and decay. The pirates were old military armor remnants of a past life. Each of them was either a deserter or a survivor of betrayal. A heavy metal door slid open. Kadaros and Lyra were shoved inside, and the door slammed shut behind them. Kadaros kicked the bars. "Damn it!" Lyra silently examined the cell. "There has to be a way out." Kadaros sank to the floor, running his hands through his hair. "We can't let them sell us. If they hand me over to the human government, I'll be interrogated and tortured. If they return you to your people, you'll be executed." Lyra exhaled deeply. "Which is why we're going to escape." Kadaros looked at her. "How? We have no weapons. Our ship is gone. And they're watching us?" Lyra smiled faintly, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "I have a secret, Kadaros." She rubbed her hands together, and a soft, blue energy crackled between her palms. Kadaros watched in astonishment. "What is that?" "I'm not just a soldier," she said, the glow illuminating her determined face. "I have a rare ability among my people, energy manipulation." Kadaros frowned. "And you're telling me this now?" Lyra smirked. "You don't reveal your best card at the start of the game." She pressed her hand against the lock. Energy pulsed through the mechanism, slipping into the circuits. A few seconds later, click. The door unlocked. Kadaros jumped to his feet. "For the love of why did we even let them lock us up?" Lyra gave him a pointed look. "Because we had to wait for the right moment. Now, we move quietly and take back our ship. If we fight, every pirate on this station will come for us." Kadaros nodded. "Fine, let's go." The corridors were eerily quiet. Most of the pirates seemed distracted elsewhere. Lyra moved cautiously, scanning their surroundings. "The ships should be in the hangar." Kadaros nodded. "But how do we get to ours?" "We'll have a lot of enemies between us and that ship." Lyra paused, then opened a side door. Inside, an old pirate guard uniform hung from a rack. "Wear this." Kadaros raised an eyebrow. "You really think they'll mistake me for one of them? If we move fast enough, yes." As Kadaros donned the disguise, Lyra grabbed a small energy pistol from a nearby shelf. "Now, you're escorting me as a prisoner. If no one questions us, we'll make it to the ship unnoticed." And so, the plan began. They maneuvered through the massive hangar, weaving between towering ships. Then, "Hey, what are you two doing there?" Kadaros cursed under his breath. Lyra spun and fired the energy pistol. The pirate dropped to the floor. "Stealth is over," Kadaros yelled. "Run!" Two more pirates spotted them and slammed the alarm. Within seconds, sirens blared through the station. Lyra and Kadaros sprinted toward their ship. Lyra leapt into the cockpit, activating the engines. Kadaros drew his sword, holding off pirates attempting to board. "Kadaros, get inside," Lyra shouted. With one final swing, Kadaros knocked down an attacker before leaping into the ship. As the door sealed shut, The pirate captain's voice crackled over the comms. "You damn fugitives! I'll hunt you to the ends of the galaxy." Lyra pushed the engines to full power. The ship shuddered before launching from the hangar in a fiery burst. But they weren't safe yet. 3 pirate fighters appeared on their radar, locking onto them. "What's the plan now?" Kadaros asked. Lyra exhaled sharply, watching the enemy ships closing in. "We either escape, or we die." And the real chase had just begun. Lyra's hands moved swiftly across the control panel. The pirate fighter ships were closing in, their laser blasts rapidly depleting the ship's shields. "At this rate, they're going to catch us," Kadaros growled, clenching his teeth. Lyra's eyes locked onto the radar screen. A massive, motionless object appeared in the void wreckage, but not just any wreckage. "I think I found a way out," she said, quickly adjusting their course. Ahead of them loomed a colossal, derelict warship. Its hull was battered, covered in burns and holes, but it didn't look entirely lifeless. "What is that thing?" Kadaros asked. "An old battlefield," Lyra replied, "most likely a warship abandoned centuries ago. But according to the radar, some of its systems are still active." Kadaros frowned. "And how does that help us?" Lyra smirked. "We can turn it into a trap." Lyra carefully maneuvered their ship into the massive warship's hangar. As the engines shut down, the only illumination came from dim emergency lights flickering along the walls. Kadaros tightened his grip on his sword. "What's the plan?" Lyra ran her fingers over the control panel. "This ship used to have defense systems. If I can reactivate them, we can lure the pirates inside and turn their own firepower against them." "That's insane," Kadaros muttered. "But it just might work," Lyra countered. They hurried off their ship, venturing deeper into the warship's hollow corridors. The vessel bore the scars of war: hanging wires, broken doors, deep burn marks along the walls. The atmosphere was non-existent, but both Lyra and Kadaros' suits were vacuum sealed. They reached an ancient control panel. The screen was cracked, but faint power signals pulsed through it. "If I can bring the systems back online, the defense turrets should reactivate," Lyra said. Kadaros kept watch. "Hurry, they've probably already boarded." Lyra's fingers danced over the console. The screen flickered, and deep within the ship, dormant systems stirred to life. Power surged through the corridors, weak red warning lights flickering to life. And then the pirates found them. "There they are," one of them shouted. Kadaros drew his sword. "How much longer?" "Just a few more seconds," Lyra called back. Blaster fire erupted as the pirates opened fire. Kadaros ducked behind a column, narrowly avoiding the shots. Lyra pressed the final command, and suddenly, the ship rumbled. "It's done." At the far end of the corridor, old, rusted defense turrets whirred to life. Though covered in dust and decay, their targeting systems still worked. In an instant, the hallway erupted into chaos. The turrets unleashed a barrage of fire on the pirates. Panic spread among them as they scrambled for cover, but most were struck down before they could react. Kadaros smirked. "I like this plan." Lyra grinned. "We're not done yet. We need to get out of here." But before they could move, an explosion rocked the corridor. A door burst apart in a fiery blast. Smoke and debris filled the air, and as it cleared, the pirate captain stepped through. "You underestimated me," he roared, gripping a massive plasma cannon. Kadaros and Lyra exchanged a look. "Now what?" Kadaros asked. Lyra took a deep breath. "Now, we fight." The pirate captain grinned savagely at Kadaros. His mechanical eye gleamed, and the massive plasma axe in his hands hummed ominously, a death sentence waiting to strike. "I've always admired men like you," he said mockingly. "Warriors who fight to the end, who cling to their honor, but always end up dead." Kadaros took a deep breath, gripping his sword with both hands. "I won't be the one dying today." And so, the duel began. The pirate captain struck first, swinging his axe down with deadly force. Kadaros barely dodged, rolling aside as the weapon crashed into the metal floor, sending sparks flying. The impact rang through the air like a grim battle hymn. Using his speed, Kadaros countered, slashing at the captain's exposed side. His blade struck, but the heavy armor absorbed most of the damage, leaving only a shallow scratch. "To slow, human," the captain roared. He spun with terrifying power, his axe slicing through the air. Kadaros raised his sword in defense but was sent flying backward by the sheer force of the blow. His back slammed against a metal panel, knocking the air from his lungs. A sharp pain shot through his shoulder. The edge of the axe had torn through his armor, cutting into his flesh. But he wasn't done yet. The pirate captain approached with heavy, echoing footsteps. "You're weak," he said with amusement, "but I'll admit, you've lasted longer than I expected." Kadaros gritted his teeth, ignoring the pain, and forced himself to stand. "It's not over yet." Meanwhile, Lyra had reached the ship's main reactor chamber. She scanned the ancient systems, searching for a power source she could exploit. If she overloaded the core, she could turn the entire ship into a massive bomb. "There's still some energy left in this wreck," she muttered. "It'll do." Her fingers moved swiftly over the holographic controls, diverting power, disabling stabilizers. The ship was now a ticking time bomb, but Kadaros wouldn't have much time. Kadaros' breathing was ragged, blood trickled down his armor, but he remained on his feet. The pirate captain, however, showed no signs of exhaustion. He lunged forward, swinging his axe toward Kadaros' chest. This time, there was no space to dodge, but the captain made a mistake. He put too much force into the swing, overextending his reach. For a brief moment, he was off balance, and a single mistake could change the tide of battle. Kadaros seized the opportunity. Summoning the last of his strength, he lunged forward and drove his sword into the exposed gap in the captain's chest armor. The pirate's eyes widened, a choked gasp escaping his throat. Kadaros gritted his teeth, forcing the blade deeper. The captain staggered back, clutching his chest. He fell to his knees. "Impossible," he whispered before collapsing lifelessly. But Kadaros dropped as well. The axe had still struck a glancing blow, but powerful enough to crack his ribs and leave a deep wound. His vision blurred. Lyra froze as the radio fell silent. Panic surged through her as she rushed back. When she found Kadaros lying on the ground, her heart clenched. "Kadaros," she cried, kneeling beside him. Blood seeped through his armor. His breathing was uneven. Kadaros managed a weak smile. "Captain's dead, but it cost me." Lyra clenched her teeth, hauling him to his feet. "We need to go. This place is about to explode." She dragged him toward their ship. As the door sealed behind them, Lyra rushed to the cockpit, firing up the engines. "Hold on, Kadaros." The ship rocketed away from the derelict warship. Behind them, the wreck trembled violently. The engines had reached critical overload. Detonation was imminent. As Lyra initiated the hyperspace jump, the warship erupted into a fiery explosion. Metal and flames scattered in all directions, consuming everything including the remaining pirate ships. In the last second, Lyra's ship vanished into hyperspace. Kadaros tried to open his eyes but couldn't. Distant voices, his body felt heavy. And then, only Lyra's voice remained. "Stay with me. I can't lose you." Then, darkness once more. Kadaros drifted in and out of consciousness. His body felt unbearably heavy, and every breath sent searing pain through his broken ribs like knives carving into his flesh. Blood loss and agony dragged his mind into a hazy abyss. But then, something changed. Lyra's voice faded into the distance. The weight in his mind lifted, and suddenly, everything fell silent. And then, he opened his eyes, but he was no longer on the ship. An endless darkness stretched around him. There was no ground beneath his feet, no gravity, yet he stood as if suspended in the void. "What is this?" he whispered. His own voice echoed back at him, and he realized this was not reality. It was something else, a dream, a limbo between life and death. Then, within the empty sky-like void, a light flickered. A figure emerged. Kadaros narrowed his eyes. Was it a person? No. The form was blurred, its edges shifting and uncertain, but it felt strangely familiar. And then, a voice spoke. "You are dying, warrior." The voice echoed, growing louder. "But you still have a choice." Kadaros clenched his teeth. "Who are you?" The figure sharpened slightly. Something in Kadaro's mind stirred like a forgotten memory resurfacing. I am a remnant, the figure said, a shadow born from your battles. If you wish to live, you must fight me. And in that instant, the figure drew a sword. A blade appeared in Kadaro's hand as well. In this realm, he would have to fight for his existence. The figure lunged forward, swift and relentless. Kadaro's barely managed to block the strike, but something felt wrong. This entity fought just like him. Every movement, every attack, it was as if he were battling his own reflection. The figure withdrew momentarily, then attacked again with perfect precision. Kadaro's parried, but he was always a fraction of a second behind. This is impossible, he muttered. How do you know my techniques? The figure laughed. Because I am you. Kadaro's mind reeled. The figure surged forward and plunged its sword into Kadaro's chest. Pain so real it felt like his body was truly being pierced. But he didn't die. He stumbled back, gasping, and then he understood. This place was his mind. If he lost here, he would truly die. He steadied his stance, inhaling deeply. Fighting within his own consciousness wasn't like anything he had ever faced. But he couldn't give up, because Lyra was waiting for him. Closing his eyes, he pushed aside his fears, his pain, his doubts. He exhaled, clearing his mind. When he opened his eyes again, the figure was still there. But this time, something was different. When the figure attacked, Kadaro's anticipated it. His blade moved faster, meeting the attack at the perfect angle. And then he found an opening. With one precise strike, Kadaro's drove his sword forward. The figure let out a piercing scream as cracks formed across its body. You have faced yourself, warrior, now, wake up. And then, it shattered into nothingness. Kadaro's gasped as his eyes snapped open. This time, he was truly awake. His vision was blurry, but he could see Lyra's face hovering above him, her eyes filled with relief and worrying. Kadaro's, thank the gods, he took a deep breath. His body ached, but his mind was clear. I'm back, Lyra blinked, for a moment. I thought your heart had stopped, but then, suddenly, you came back. Kadaro's managed a weak smile. Long story, Lyra nodded. Right now, the only thing that matters is that you're alive. Their ship drifted through hyperspace, lost between stars. But both of them knew this was only the beginning. When Kadaro's opened his eyes, he was in the cockpit of the ship. His body was still heavy, and each breath carried the echo of his wounds, but he was here, he was still alive. And Lyra was sitting right across from him, her eyes fixed on a distant point beyond. Through the hyperspace window, endless stars streaked past. The silence, after the chaos of battle, was almost unsettling in its peace. Kadaro shifted slightly. Lyra immediately turned to him, her gaze filled with both relief and exhaustion. You're finally awake. Kadaro's gave a faint smile. How long was I out? Lyra shook her head. A few days. You scared me, Kadaro's. He took a deep breath and slowly sat up. The ship was still moving, but he had no idea where they were headed. Where are we going? He asked. Lyra gazed into the endless expanse beyond the glass. I don't know, she said quietly. But somewhere no one can find us. Kadaro's remained silent for a moment. Their enemies were still out there. Both the human government and Lyra's people were likely hunting them. And after killing the pirate captain, the outlaws wouldn't let them go so easily either. But none of that mattered anymore. Neither their pasts, their pursuers, nor the wars they had fought controlled them now. And after that, Kadaro's asked. Lyra turned to him, and for the first time, she truly smiled free and burdened. After that, we just live. And their ship disappeared into the depths of the endless void.